Welcome to Dirt Bike Channel. I'm your host Kyle Brotherson. Today we're going to give you 13 tips in order to move over from a 4-stroke to a 2-stroke, because there's a lot of people that are kind of thinking about making the transition and all they've ever ridden is a 4-stroke, and they're uneasy about moving to a 2-stroke. So here are 13 things for you to think about or to set your mind at ease and answer some of those questions for you as you transition over. I should mention that I'm not an expert, but I am changing bikes all the time. I've had over 45 motorcycles, and it's been a really solid mix between 2-stroke and 4-stroke, and I switch 2-stroke and 4-stroke all the time, and I've gotten better. I'm not like a pro, I'm not an expert, but I've learned a lot of things from my own experience as I switch from 2-stroke to 4-stroke, ride after ride after ride after ride, and I've developed some things that help me to do that, either mindset things or practice things on the bike. And so that's what we're going to talk about in the video today. Hey, something to note is that this video is focusing on moving from 4-stroke over to 2-stroke and some of the benefits or things you need to know. If this video does well, and if you guys want, I'll do a video in reverse, because I do think there are some different things if you're moving from a 2-stroke over to a 4-stroke that you need to know. I'd have a totally different list for that, so let me know down in the comments or send me an email and let me know if you want to do the video, the opposite of this video. I just need to say that it isn't that 2-strokes or 4-strokes are better. They're just made for different purposes, and some of them shine in conditions where the other one wouldn't. In fact, they do that all the time. And so I prefer to ride the 2-strokes a lot of times because of the type of riding that I do, but the 4-strokes are amazing for some of the riding that I do and some of the riding that you do. So there's not a right or wrong answer, but as you're moving over, you will notice some nuances between the two, and it's important to note where one is good and one is maybe lacking for a certain type of discipline. Number 13 is about pre-mixing fuel. Now, I get this question a lot. Now, some of the bikes, some of the TPI bikes, or even some of the betas that are oil injected are going to mix the fuel for you. But what I want you to know is that pre-mixing fuel is not hard. All you have to do is get a measuring cup and a gas can and then pick a quality oil. I've had really good luck with oils like Motorex and Motul and Reverend Motors and a couple of other, and AMSOIL. And you pick an oil, and if it's a good synthetic oil, you can email me for some suggestions, but a good place to start is about 65 to 1. 65 parts gas to 1 part oil. You use the measuring cup, you go to the gas station, you dump the oil in the can, and then you fill it up with 5 gallons of gas or whatever it is. But mixing oil is not hard to do, and you shouldn't be intimidated by it. Again, if you have questions, you can email me, and either me or my assistant will go over that with you, and we can help you sort that part out. So don't be afraid about mixing fuel. Oh, and super quick, you can enter to win this 2-stroke. This is a 2021 KTM 250 XCW TPI. I'm giving this away in the month of August. All you have to do is go to my website, dirtbikechannel.com. You can get entered to win this thing, or you can use my links to Rocky Mountain ATV down in the video description. I'm also going to bring you to Utah. I'm going to fly you here, put you up in a hotel, and we're going to do a ride, and you're going to win this bike. So go to my website, dirtbikechannel.com right now to get entered to win this thing. It ends August 31st, 1 month only. Go. Number 12, riding your 2-stroke on the street. Now, while it is perfectly okay to have some connecting roads for a mile or two, say on the oil road on your 2-stroke, I don't think 2-strokes make good dual sport bikes where you're gonna go for 10, 20, 30, 40 miles. I don't think a 2-stroke is a good option for you to be commuting 15, 20 miles a day on this bike. They vibrate a little bit more. They do better with like variable throttle. I don't think they do that well. They kind of run a little bit rougher if you just hold constant throttle for like 5 miles. So if you're going to do a lot of dual sporting or a lot of like road use, leave that to the 4-strokes, because I just don't think the 2-strokes are a viable, great option for some of those longer road trips. So just keep that one in mind. Number 11, let's talk about engine oil changes versus gear oil changes. See, on your 4-stroke, it was an engine oil change because that oil was lubricating the engine and the head and the transmission and the clutch. It was doing a lot, and it was getting very, very hot and breaking down. On the 2-stroke, it's only lubricating your transmission and your clutch, which means there's less heat in that oil, which means it can go for longer intervals. Now, if you're not using your clutch very much and you're not getting that very hot, these bikes can go 30 or 40 hours between gear oil changes. That's a benefit for you, so congratulations. A lot of times I've done that. Other times, if I'm beating up on the clutch and I'm getting this thing really hot, the clutch really hot by dragging my clutch or something like that, you might want to change your gear oil at around every 10 hours. But the point is, your intervals between gear oil changes or engine oil changes on the two-strokes are further and fewer between. You don't have to do it as much. So congratulations on that. It's one of the benefits of moving over to a two-stroke. Number 10, let's talk about engine rebuilds. Now, one of the benefits of going with a two-stroke is that you can easily rebuild your motor, at least your top end, inside your garage or in your shop. In the four-stroke world, it's a lot more complicated. The four-stroke engines are a lot more complicated. There's more moving parts, there's more things, and so it's less likely that you're gonna rebuild your four-stroke in your garage. However, a two-stroke is much, much easier. There have been multiple two-strokes that have been rebuilt in this shop. Here's a piston that we did here in the shop, and here's a top-end kit that I have for another 250, or this one might be a 300, because it's a little bit easier to replace and exchange pistons out of a two-stroke. So it's one of the benefits of moving from a four-stroke over to the two-stroke world, because you can typically rebuild your motor, 2 or 3 times inside your garage with very, very minimal tools, and it's pretty simple. So that's one of the benefits of moving over to a two-stroke. Let's talk about blipping the throttle versus constant throttle. See, on a four-stroke, you need to hold the throttle constant because of the engine braking, which we're gonna get into later. But on a two-stroke, you can do a little bit more blipping. In fact, I suggest that you blip the throttle a little bit when you're riding a two-stroke. It's just super fun. They feel playful. And you can actually do a little bit more coasting, if you will, on the two-stroke than you can on the four-stroke because of that lack of engine braking. It makes you feel like you're freewheeling, and it's a really great, fun feeling. So blip the throttle a little bit more, zing, 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 when you're on a two-stroke. It makes it really fun. Number 8, where your two-stroke will shine over the four-stroke and where it won't. See, where the two-stroke is really gonna shine is in your mountain single track. It's gonna shine in your technical terrain. It's gonna shine when you're actually going slow. The four-stroke is gonna shine in your faster stuff, like your motocross tracks and your wide open desert stuff and blitzing whoops in 3rd, 4th, 5th gear. The two-stroke isn't gonna shine as much in those faster areas. Yes, it can do all those things, but this is gonna shine when it's slower, more nasty, more technical, more rooty terrain. So don't be surprised if you're a little bit less comfortable on your two-stroke when you're blasting out 5th gear through the whoops. We're gonna get into that in just a minute, but just know there are places where it shines and where it doesn't. Number 7, let's talk about carburetor jetting, spark plugs, and the range of your fuel tank for your rides. See, a lot of times if your bike isn't tuned properly, if you've got a TPI bike, you probably don't need to worry about this that much. But if you've got a bike with a carburetor, you're gonna probably need to tune that thing because so many people are running too much fuel through their system, which is then causing them to get much worse fuel mileage and causing possibly their spark plugs to foul because the spark plug has too much fuel in it and doesn't get hot enough, aka it's too cold and it fouls. So if you're using a carburetor, you'll probably need to tune that thing, and depending on where your elevation is, you may need to take some of the fuel out of that fuel air mix so that your range can come back up and so that your spark plug doesn't foul. Yes, these bikes can go a long ways. A lot of times I can get these bikes where I'm going anywhere between 30 to 40 miles per gallon. So that's some pretty long rides, but you've got to make sure that you're tuning that thing properly through your carburetor, or if it's TPI, there's a couple things you can maybe do. But yeah, we want to make sure we're not fouling plugs, which I will get into a little bit later on another subject. Number 6, less stalling. See, when you're moving from a four-stroke over to a two-stroke, you're gonna stall less in those tricky technical situations when you're getting over rocks or logs or roots or some of these other obstacles. And that's because the two-stroke is firing that piston down every single time it comes to the top of the cylinder. So if you're in a tricky situation and you're at 3,000 RPMs, this bike is firing 3,000 times a minute, versus in that same situation on a four-stroke, it would only be firing 1,500 times a minute, which means the four-stroke will stall where the two-stroke won't. So that's a really, really big benefit of moving over to two-strokes. It's one of the biggest reasons why I ride them in single track and mountain terrain, is because they stall far, far less in those same types of situations than a 4-stroke would. And so that's a really big benefit of riding a 2-stroke, and you're welcome for that one. My number 5 thing in this list is let that motor lug. We already talked about the fact that it doesn't stall, so we want to use that to our advantage, and we want to let this motor lug, and that's going to give us traction. When the RPMs are low, the traction is high. Remember that. Also remember that it's important again to make sure that your fuel air mixture is right so that you don't foul plugs. We want to make sure that there's enough heat on those plugs. But we're gonna let this thing lug, and we are going to just let it go and get us through those things and get us over those obstacles and get us up those hills in low RPM situations where we're not spinning the wheel. It is fantastic the amount of traction that you can have when you're lugging a motor on one of these 2-strokes. Number 4, your 2-stroke might feel a little bit twitchy at first for the first few rides. Another way to put it is it might feel a little less stable or less planted than your 4-stroke did. Now trust me, this is something that you'll get used to after a few rides, and you'll actually start to come to enjoy that because you won't be wrestling the bike as much. It takes less energy to get this thing to turn and to get it to kind of change lines, and that's a feature. It's because it has less centripetal force, or less centripetal like rotating mass in that motor. And so the bike feels lighter. Even though it might weigh the exact same weight as a 4-stroke, it will feel lighter when you're riding it, aka a little less stable, a little more twitchy, but you'll learn to use that to your advantage and really come to appreciate that fact about your 2-stroke. Number 3 thing that I have for you when moving from 4-stroke over to 2-stroke is do not warm up your 2-stroke the same way you did with your 4-stroke. On your 4-stroke, you could just start that thing and let it idle for 10 minutes, come all the way up to operating temperature sitting there idling. More likely than not, if you do that on a 2-stroke, you're going to foul the plug or at least fill the thing clear full of goo in the power valve. What you want to do, typically with mine, I've never fouled a plug on a big bike. On a 125 or bigger, I have never fouled a plug yet, knock on wood. And part of that is because the bike is properly jetted. The other part of that is because I only let it idle for a minute, tops. And then I'm on the bike and I'm starting to maybe do some balance drills, or I'm slowly shifting through the gears. I'm not getting on it hard. I'm not putting hard load on the motor, but I'm also not just letting it sit there and idle at low RPMs and foul the plug or fill the thing up with goo. So when you're moving over from 4-stroke to 2-stroke, just know, put all your gear on first and then start the bike, and then just go ride it slowly. Don't go high RPMs, but you're warming that bike up quicker, and you're not just letting it warm up by idling. I promise that is going to help your experience with 2-strokes, and you're not going to be fouling plugs or having other related issues to warming up the bike. So that's my number 3 tip for you. Number 2 tip, see this shifter right here? You're gonna become well acquainted with this thing because you're gonna wanna shift early and shift often. You're gonna be shifting more on the 2-stroke than you were on the 4-stroke, and that has to do with how the power is delivered. See, on these 250s and 300 2-strokes, the power is kind of like lumped there in the low to mid range RPMs. On your 4-stroke, it was like this huge broad power band. These things have an amazing, exciting power band to them, but it's in a tighter narrow of RPMs. And I think that on a lot of these bikes, it pays you to shift earlier in the RPM range and shift often to stay kind of in the meat of that power. It's an amazing feeling riding these bikes, but if you try to wring out the top end on a lot of these modern 2-strokes, you're gonna find that the top end is pretty flat, way flatter than it was on the 4-strokes, because the 4-strokes will pull forever. This bike isn't gonna pull forever, so you'll wanna shift it again, shift it up, and get it back into that power and stay in the meat of the power. It's going to be amazing if you shift early and you shift often as compared to how you're riding your 4-stroke. Okay, you wondered when we were gonna get to this, and now we're here. It's my number 1 tip from switching from 4-stroke over to 2-stroke, and it has to do with engine braking. See, engine braking is a big thing on the 4-stroke, and it's not a big thing on the 2-stroke. Here's what I'd say about engine braking. Your engine is for speeding up, and your brakes are for slowing down. Period. full stop. And if you start to think about this in your riding, it's gonna make a big change. Now, I'm not saying that engine braking and using engine braking is wrong to do on the 4-stroke. It is something that you can use to your advantage, but you don't get that on the 2-stroke. So for me, switching back and forth between the two all the time, I've stopped using engine braking. I pretend like it's not a thing at all. I just know that my throttle and my engine is for speeding up and my brakes are for slowing down. The brakes are far better at slowing you down than they are than the engine is. And so for me, switching back and forth, I would just say, hey, look, if you think you're gonna start switching over to a 2-stroke, just change your mindset on your 4-stroke a little bit to where like, hey, stop relying on engine braking. If you can stop relying on engine braking and just have a smooth throttle on your 4-stroke and not chop the throttle, then when you move over to, and then you're just slowing down using your brakes, then when you move over to the 2-stroke, it's not a big deal. I don't ever, I'm not sitting there blowing corners when I swap from a 2-stroke to a 4-stroke, because I'm trying not to ever use engine braking on either bike. It's easy on here because there's no engine braking. Have to consciously make sure that I don't use engine braking when I'm on the 4-stroke. So that's just my best tip for you is engine braking is a big thing over here. It's not gonna work on your 2-stroke, so maybe you should adjust your riding style on both motorcycles where you're not going to be reliant on any engine braking because you don't need it. Throttle is for speeding up and brakes are for slowing down, period, full stop. Hey, remember, if you want to win a 2-stroke for basically next to nothing, you can win this 2021 KTM 250XE WTBI. It's an amazing top-of-the-line enduro bike, and I'm giving it away to one of you. All you have to do is go to my website, dirtbikechannel.com. I'm also going to fly you out to Utah, put you up in a hotel, and go riding. You can use my links to Rocky Mountain ATV to get entries for this thing, or you can buy anything on my website, and it's pretty stinking killer. Hey, thanks for watching this video. It's a lot of fun to make. If you have topic suggestions for other videos, send an email to me, kyle@dirtbikechannel.com, or you can leave it down in the comments and my assistant will probably dig through there and find that. But if you want to be sure, send an email to kyle@dirtbikechannel.com or customerservice@dirtbikechannel.com, and those will bubble through to me. If you want to support what we're doing here, one of the best ways you can do it is to actually get some entries for this motorcycle that I'm giving away. It ends August 31st of this year, so it's August only. Other really good ways to support Dirt Bike Channel are to use my links for Rocky Mountain ATV and Motorsport and Amazon. I have them down in the video description and I have them over on dirtbikechannel.com. There's a links section up there, or you can just send me an email and I can send you a bookmark or a link that you can bookmark in your browser. You've got to have the ID tag at the end of that link. So if you're not sure, send us an email and we'll tell you what we're talking about. But it's a great way to support Dirt Bike Channel. And again, if you want me to do this video in reverse, switching from a 2-stroke over to 4-stroke, what are some of the things you should know? Let me know, because I can totally do that video and it would be some different things that I would certainly highlight in that case. So, okay. I'm gonna go get this thing edited down and get it uploaded to YouTube. So hopefully everyone is having an amazing week, an amazing summer, and you're getting out there and you're doing a lot of riding and leaving a single track. So thank you very much, and we'll catch you in the next video.